Godzilla is fighting Godzilla from space? That's right, we near the end of the Heisei era as Godzilla battles one of his more unique adversaries. It's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, here on the Atomic Lizards podcast.
And welcome to Atomic Lizards. We're a trio of friends podcasting about the Godzilla franchise and other films we love. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udi, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the Kaiju extraordinaire.
On today's episode of Kaiju Korner, we are covering Godzilla vs. Spacegodzilla from 1994.
A mysterious extraterrestrial being resembling Godzilla rapidly approaches Earth. The monster, dubbed Spacegodzilla, lands to challenge the king of the monsters. Meanwhile, the humans use the Mogera mecha to help in the fight.
Godzilla vs. Spacegodzilla is a 1994 film directed by Kenzo Yamashita and has special effects by Koichi Kawakita. It is the 21st film in the Godzilla franchise and the 6th film in the franchise's Heisei era. Godzilla vs. Spacegodzilla stars Megumi Odaka, Jun Hazuzume, Zenkichi Yoneyama, Akira Imoto, and Towako Yoshikawa, with Kenpachiro Satsuma as Godzilla.
This episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't yet. Now let's get started. What are your guys' initial thoughts on this movie? Dan, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I do not mind starting us off. So, I guess my quick thoughts. Ultimately, I don't really have too much to say on this one. I've always remembered this as being my least favorite in the Heisei era. Not necessarily because I think it's bad. I mean, it's a fine movie, but I do feel like it has a slow start. And the first half kind of drags on for me. I think the moment that Space Godzilla arrives on Earth, it does start to pick up then. We'll get more into Space Godzilla's design later on, but I do like his design. We get a lot of action in that second half as well, from Godzilla once again just being a menace to Japan, to Mogera taking on Space Godzilla, and then, of course, Godzilla fighting Space Godzilla himself. Ultimately, I still think this is my least favorite in the Heisei era, as I feel like the other movies are more interesting to me in their concepts, and this movie does have some unique concepts, such as Project T, but I feel like those concepts weren't really explored enough to really keep my interest. I really do feel like the slow start in the first half is kind of what brings it down for me. I just find it kind of boring at times, and that's not something I can really say about the other films in the Heisei era. Once again, I want to reiterate that I didn't find this movie bad, and it's certainly a lot better than some of the worst the Showa era has to offer, but compared to the rest of the Heisei era films, this one is the least interesting to me. But at least it gave us a cool monster in Space Godzilla, so there's that. What about you guys?
So, for me, I like this one. I feel like it almost felt like a more modern Showa era movie. It felt not as silly as like those get, like especially towards the end, but like structurally it reminded. Structurally they're all kind of the same, but gave me a sort of like a Showa era vibe. It felt very like simplified. Compared to like some of the more recent ones. I don't know. It just kind of gave me more of like a Showa era vibe, but like more up to date. Like obviously the special effects were like really, really good, and even like the cinematography and like the look of the film was really, really well done. But in terms of like movie quality, like it doesn't reach the peaks of the rest of the Heisei era for me. But I still really liked it. Kind of like how Dan said, it didn't bother me. The first half did definitely feel like slower, but I mean, that's for the most part usually how these go anyway. Yeah, the second half did feel very like it picked up a lot. Like the action, there was a lot more action and all the fighting and everything. Like, and it was cool having it be kind of like a three-way fight for the most part. Because I feel like that kept that a little bit interesting. Not to say that these movies are always like a 1v1. Like usually there's some sort of like teaming up going on. But yeah, I don't know. I liked the updated Mogera, especially like how it's split up into two units. I thought that was cool. I don't know how it'll rank in comparison to the rest of this era, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't as forgettable as like a number of like the Showa era movies, kind of by any means. Like I think Space Godzilla itself helps a lot in that regard because Space Godzilla's look and design is so cool. And we'll, like Dan said, we'll talk about that more later. I'm disappointed. This is the only movie that Space Godzilla's in, correct?
Yep, per the course for most of the new monsters shown off in the Heisei era.
Yeah, and see, that's a shame because Space Godzilla. We'll talk about it more later, but that's a shame because I like the idea of it.
There is rumor, it's just fan speculation, but there is speculation that Space Godzilla might be the villain in Godzilla X Kong Supernova. We will have to see, but that would be cool.
That would be cool. Can you? I mean, this wouldn't happen. They wouldn't probably let this happen. But could you imagine they did Space Godzilla in both Supernova and the -1 sequel because the G cells are back in, like in -1? But I don't think that would be the case. But anyway, Space Godzilla was really cool, and I liked how they had a lot of like little references in this. Like they brought up how the possible creation of Space Godzilla and like that stuff. There was like a couple of other references to some of the other more recent movies as well throughout the movie, which I thought was fun. But yeah, overall, I guess just to not keep rambling, I enjoyed it for what it was, despite it feeling like relatively tried and true. I don't think it wasn't too boring and it wasn't too lackluster, forgettable. It was just like, it was good, you know? And of course, like as always, the second half is way more interesting and exciting than the first half, but it is what it is at this point. But yeah, what about you, Miranda?
So this movie wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting space aliens and like being in space more. It wasn't that, but that is totally okay. I still enjoyed watching this movie. I think some of those storylines could have been expanded on a bit more. They just felt kind of all over the place, I guess. Or maybe just not like expanded as much as I would like them to be. It felt like there was a lot of things going on, and it's very possible that I could definitely miss things while watching it. So, like, that's a factor, but it's just kind of odd, some of the stuff, which we might get into later. But in general, I liked seeing Space Godzilla, that final battle and his crystal spike things in the city fighting Godzilla and the Mogera was really cool to see. So, yeah, I mean, it's a Godzilla movie. They're very repetitive, but this one was unique enough to stand out, especially with Space Godzilla, and I hope one day he comes back. So if he is in Supernova, that's going to be a fantastic day. Hopefully he is. I mean, Supernova, space, they're connected somehow, some way. But yeah, so those are our general thoughts. So let's dive into the conversation a bit more. Is this movie what you were expecting it to be, or was it anything different from your initial idea of what it would be? I guess, did it meet your expectation and fall short? How are we feeling about it?
Yeah, also, real quick to comment on the possibility of Space Godzilla being in Supernova. Wasn't the in-film explanation for Space Godzilla's creation was that G cells got sucked into a black hole and were created with like I thought an exploding star had something to do with it, but then again, I could be misremembering it.
I believe they said that Godzilla's cells got sent into space via Biollante, and when Mothra went into space. And so the cells went into space and mutated and went through a black hole and came out as Space Godzilla. Because he is the exact same Godzilla gene cells as Earth Godzilla.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So it was just a black hole. I didn't know if an exploding star had anything to do with it because that's what a supernova is. It's when a star explodes. So I was like, oh, hey, that could be another clue. But
I don't know how black holes are made.
That is true. Yeah. I don't know how they're made either.
So maybe.
Maybe.
They definitely could write it that way.
Yeah.
It would be really fun.
It would be. Yeah. But I mean, I guess to answer your question that you asked, Miranda, I'm actually not sure how to answer it because It's a good question for you two because this is the first time you guys have watched this movie, but I had already seen this movie a couple times beforehand. So, like, I've always felt a tad underwhelmed by this movie. And then, like, I'm trying to remember when I first watched it. I think I even still felt a little underwhelmed. So I'm gonna say that maybe it didn't really meet my expectations. And once again, I don't want to make it sound like I hate this movie or that I think it's a bad movie because I don't think it's bad. I certainly don't think it's bad. I just think that it just kind of drags on a bit. It's just in the beginning. It just I guess I didn't really know what to expect with Space Godzilla because believe it or not, the first time I ever was exposed to Space Godzilla was in one of the Godzilla fighting games. I think it was Godzilla Save the Earth. Like, because I grew up with that game. Like back when we first got our PS2, that was like one of the first games I got, and I was introduced to a lot of different Godzilla monsters in that game that I had never even seen the movies for, and Space Godzilla was one of them. So, but yeah, I guess in a way it didn't really meet my expectations, but once again, though, Space Godzilla is cool, so I do like him. So I guess in that regard, it met my expectations there in Space Godzilla being a cool monster, but the movie itself, I'd probably say nah, probably not. Pretty underwhelming for me.
I mean, that's fair. I could see that. It is kind of slow moving and there's not really much to it. So I totally see that.
It feels like a Godzilla movie. I was saying structurally earlier, I'm like, oh, it's more like Showa. But then, I mean, for the most part, most Godzilla movies really are kind of the same. It's like the first act is all setting up the human characters, and then, oh, Godzilla's doing this. And then kind of the middle part, like the second act, is problems arise and either like someone kills Godzilla or something happens to Godzilla, he gets defeated, and then the final act is Godzilla facing off against the humans and or the other kaiju and or resuscitating Godzilla or powering him up. It basically just ends in the big climactic fight at the end, and then Godzilla or Mothra or some other character flies off or walks off into the sunset, and then that's it. It's really not hard to kind of predict what this will be like, and so this fits right in with the majority of these. I would say the Godzilla movies that stick out to me that do surprise me are the ones that end up having some sort of thematic content. So, like, that's why I remember when Godzilla versus Hedorah, well, like, when we watched that, I remember being really surprised by that because I was not expecting any sort of actual thematic content or anything like that. And like, not only did that one have like still relevant thematic content, but it was done very well, like very seriously. And again, like there was very dark moments in that movie at times, like showing the smog monster and everything, and like the death that would ensue from the people in the area. So like, that was really well done. The 54 original still holds up really well. And then, -1, of course, is like the best, the cream of the crop. So I would say like those surprised me because, I'm not expecting that necessarily. When we do get it, it's a nice surprise, but I wouldn't say that I'm expecting that level of movie from the majority of these. So when we do get something like this that just feels like a pretty tried and true Godzilla movie, it's like, I mean, yeah, I was expecting that, I guess. Structurally, it's pretty much the same, and the characters have all have pretty familiar motivations, I guess, and the way that the movie unfolds is pretty by the numbers. I would say the biggest changes on a movie-to-movie basis really are just the other kaijus that aren't Godzilla that appear. Either they'll have like a really wacky design, especially like in this era, they really played around with like different designs, or just like their powers are interesting or unique. But otherwise, like pretty predictable movies, I would say. So it is pretty much what I expected it to be, but that's not bad. Like I said, for being pretty familiar, this felt well done. So I was okay with it. Could it have been better? I would say so, yeah. But I'm not expecting the same, like the highest bar possible for each of these movies, like that I know that these movies can achieve. I'm not expecting that. So that's not to like crap on this movie, because it's fine. It's really fine, and I did like it. But again, it's just not like the tip of the spear, So it was a very fine, enjoyable Godzilla movie that is very beautiful at moments for sure. But yeah, what about you, Miranda? How did you feel about this movie? Was it kind of what you expected it to be?
Nope. I was kind of a little bit disappointed.
Oh.
Because you got Godzilla. Space Godzilla. What's in space? Aliens. Do we get aliens? No. There's no aliens in it. I wanted aliens controlling Space Godzilla and Godzilla fighting Space Godzilla in space. And, like, I wanted Mothra to show up and, like, because she went to space and I wanted, like, Biollante to, like, show back up. And, like, I thought it was going to be this whole big spectacular. And it kind of wasn't. It was kind of, like, okay. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I really like Space Godzilla. He's cool. I liked the fight at the end of the movie. I think that was very interesting with, like, the spikes and the crystals and his, like, abilities and whatnot. But, like, I don't know. It was just missing a bit of, like, that cheesy sci-fi that I like. You know, going out into space, having aliens. The plot in general was fine. It was interesting. I think they could have expanded it a bit more. Because, like, one thing that was odd is, like, they have baby Godzilla show up at the beginning, and he's, like, there. And, like, the whole first part of the movie kind of, like, threw me for a loop because there's this guy who wants to kill Godzilla because he, like, killed his friend that was in that tower with the rocket launcher in that previous movie. And I'm like, okay, fine. We learned that, like, halfway through the movie or whatever. But, like, he's setting up, like, tear gas on the beach, and the baby Godzilla is just walking along the beach, and they're just, like, tear gassing baby Godzilla, which is not a vibe. Do not like it. Do not like tear gas. Like, no. And, like, you're just torturing this baby Godzilla, and then Godzilla comes out of the ocean and walks onto the beach, and they're, like, trying to shoot him with, like, this tractor beam tracker thing. I don't know. And I'm just like, what is going on? And, like, maybe I missed something. Maybe the version I watched did not explain what's going on. I was just, like, thrown off completely for the first part of the movie. And then it, like, got into the movie, and I was like, fine.
Yeah, and to, like, add on to that, because you bring up a good point. There's a lot going on in, like, that first half, because you got that whole side plot with, the guy that hates Godzilla because that one random general from Godzilla versus Biollante died, and I guess that was his friend, and he wants revenge on Godzilla, so he's trying to, like, kill him. And then he has all these, like, weird plans, like he wants to shoot Godzilla with a blood coagulant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, there's that, and then you got the Project T. That's where Miki and that other, like, scientist comes in. What's her name? Gondo, I believe her name was. And, like, they want to see if they can control Godzilla using Miki's telepathic abilities, which I think is kind of interesting. I wish the movie would have expanded a little bit more on that. There is a lot going on at the beginning. That is a good point. And I think that's also what just makes it just drag, because you got all these different things happening and all this different, like, setup, and it kind of doesn't really go anywhere. Like, nothing really happens with Project T. The guy, like, I mean, granted, he doesn't really get his revenge on Godzilla, but then, like, the Heisei era would end right there if he did, you know? So, yeah, there's just a lot going on and not really much payoff to it.
Baby Godzilla gets, like, trapped in this crystal thing, and then he doesn't show up for the rest of the movie, and you're like, what is going on with him? And then Mothra's fairies show up and is like, you should save the Earth or whatever to the telepathic lady. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So she signs up, she does it. And then she has telekinesis now. She can move things with her mind, which I did like. I liked that. I wish we could have seen more of that. Like, give me this weird alternate Earth. I mean, we're already in an alternative Earth because Godzilla exists, but, like, another one where, like, hey, this stuff, this, like, superhero stuff, like Professor X stuff is real. It's going around. It's, like, I don't know. It was that concept is so interesting, and it's like, well, okay. I mean, I do like that it's been following through, and I assume the next movie will also have some kind of, like, connection to that theme of, like, telekinesis and communicating with Godzilla via your mind and stuff. I wish there was a bit more of it, like expand a bit more on it. But yeah, there's just a lot going on. It doesn't really seem like anything is being explained. But then you get to the second half and it's just traditional Godzilla movie where it's like, here's this giant robot, here's Godzilla, here's Space Godzilla, let's fight. And then I guess baby Godzilla's okay because he comes back at the end. And, classic Godzilla walks out into the ocean, they say bye and wave at them. But, even though I was slightly disappointed there wasn't aliens, it did satisfy the sci-fi, space stuff that I do like. So you still got a little space battle with some asteroids, which I thought was really cool. I think it's the only time they go into space.
I think it's totally fair, the point you brought up about expecting aliens, because if not in a movie titled Space Godzilla, or Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, when or how is it not aliens that created Space Godzilla? Or how is Space Godzilla not an alien himself technically? I totally understand. I would have probably expected aliens as well, but I want to say I think Dan accidentally told me in a conversation some time ago that there were no aliens in this movie, and I was like, oh, never mind then.
Pretty sure it was probably mentioned at some point to me too, but clearly I forgot. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe it.
Yeah, you were like, nah, they were just trying to hype me down.
That's to throw me off the trail.
Admittedly, I guess theoretical creation of Space Godzilla is still cool, but just not as, not what I was expecting with a name like Space Godzilla.
Yeah, it's definitely cool where he's a mutated gene that got shot into space and traveled through a black hole. And that is really interesting. And I like these alternative versions of the main kaijus. We saw Batro, which is Goth Mothra, and this is Punk Crystal Godzilla. So I'm liking these ideas, I'm liking the vibes, and I hope he comes back one day. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I also agree. It's such a shame that neither... What's Little Shop of Horrors kaiju again?
Audrey 2?
Well...
Or Biolante?
Thank you.
Audrey
you
2?
answered correctly.
I mean, yeah. Wait, no, you meant the Godzilla monster that's like Audrey 2.
Yeah, my bad.
Now that's a movie they should make. Godzilla, the musical.
That could be fun, honestly. I would watch that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a blast.
There's a YouTube video for that, but not an official movie.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Kaiju Korner episode? Question mark?
It wouldn't be a very long episode because the actual video itself is I think only 4 or 5 minutes long.
Perfect. But sorry, anyway, with Biolante and Space Godzilla's design, it is a shame that they have yet to come back in any iteration outside of these movies. Well, I guess they did add, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong because I was wrong last time, but I'm pretty sure they added Space Godzilla to Giga Bash. So outside of video game crossovers or things like that, I don't think they've come back in any way, shape, or form to the movie. So hopefully someday soon they'll add them both, and Hedorah. I'd be happy with any three or any of those three coming back.
I mean, they did bring Mogra back from the movie The Mysterian from 1957. So, there is precedent of them bringing back other characters into the future. Just depends on how much time they want to wait between bringing them back.
At this point, I mean, it'll have been a hot minute, but, now's the time to do it, I guess. If ever.
I mean, I think he would fit perfectly into the Monsterverse right now. Because we already have the Hollow Earth. We might as well go to space as well.
I mean, yeah, I can agree with that.
Would it fit with the Monarch show? No. But Godzilla X Kong, A New Empire, definitely fit with that.
Yeah. And I mean, if they keep the same tone as A New Empire, then I think they could really do anything. Because since that was so Showa era-y, I feel like anything in the Godzilla franchise so far would fit right in. It'd probably be like modernized, but outside of that, I feel like there's nothing they could really do at this point that, like, if they did aliens in the next Godzilla movie in Supernova, I feel like that makes sense. I would be curious to see how they would do aliens, but I think that they could do it and get away with it, I think.
The alien from Alien shows up, and it's Godzilla versus aliens.
A giant xenomorph
That
Godzilla would be
interesting.
crazy.
It'd be a fight. I don't know who would win, but it'd be interesting to watch.
Well, it depends. Are the aliens Godzilla sized or are they xenomorph sized?
There's some pretty big xenomorphs, aren't there?
Yeah, but not as big as Godzilla.
Well, I guess it depends on what Godzilla we're talking about, because he ranges from like 50 feet to 1,000, depending on the movie and time period and how tall the buildings are.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like the shortest Godzilla or the smallest Godzilla is still bigger than the biggest alien from Alien franchise.
Probably right. I don't know enough about Alien to say otherwise. So I'll say yeah. One thing I did find interesting about Spacegodzilla is that like he can emit electrical interferences, and I do like the fact that he can like fly around and generate a shield. His shield, very cool. I liked the look of that, the design of that. I'm like, yes, give me Godzilla or Spacegodzilla with a shield. I was not expecting that, and I was pleasantly surprised about that. And him flying around and like doing like the, what is it called, like EVP or whatever, where you take out electronics. I thought that was really cool, and I was not expecting that. I didn't realize he was gonna have like powers. I thought he was just Godzilla with spikes, and it turns out no, he has powers, which I thought was really cool. Like he can absorb energy and like regenerate and stuff. So it's like, wow, this guy's really, really cool. And I liked his design. Did you guys like his design?
Yeah, I very much liked I almost said Mechagodzilla. I very much like Space Godzilla's design. I think it's cool. I like the crystals, and I think the head is very cool looking. I was paying close attention to his face. He has like different like teeth like coming out of his jaws, like different like rows of teeth coming out. So that's cool. I think the little like crest he has on his forehead is kind of interesting. I do like all the like crystals that make up his back. Like it's a neat way of kind of keeping with the spirit of a Godzilla design, but also making it different enough to the point where it's not just a ripoff of Godzilla's spikes, So, now that I think about it, the two biggest spikes on Space Godzilla kind of remind me of the two big spikes on Zilla from the Godzilla 1998 movie. Interesting. But yeah, I also think it was cool that Space Godzilla, he had powers. Like I remember this from the Godzilla fighting games, like Godzilla Save the Earth, but like he can like summon these crystals to like appear, and like he can use those to his advantage and whatnot. I don't remember exactly what the in-movie explanation for what those crystals did was.
I don't think there was a in-movie explanation. All I know is just like they're rockets that are crystals. They're crystal rockets, and he's shooting them. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm here for it. Let's go.
It is cool. Yeah, I do like Space Godzilla's powers. And yeah, that was the EMP that you were referring to earlier. That's pretty cool, which, once again, thinking of like modern movies, the Muto from Godzilla 2014 had like an EMP ability. So I like Space Godzilla. I think he's a cool villain. Is he a little over the top and cheesy? Yeah, but which like Godzilla kaiju, like enemy kaiju isn't, Space Godzilla is a cool enemy. I would like to see him, much like you guys, I would like to see him return one day. I think that could be cool if done well, I guess. But and once again, we don't know. We don't know what the new Empire is going to be. Or the new Empire. We don't know what Supernova is going to be, so it would be really cool if they do go with Space Godzilla. I just hope if they do go that route, that Supernova is more Godzilla focused and less Kong focused, because it would be really lame to put a Godzilla villain in that movie and have it be Kong focused, so we shall see. But yeah.
I agree with that. It would be really weird for it to be Kong focused. Like, he's got to take a backseat. Like, this one's just straight up Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. Like, Kong's there, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you guys. I think the Space Godzilla design was really cool. I had already seen what Space Godzilla looked like before, so I mean, it wasn't like a surprise when I saw him. But the one thing I didn't know was when Space Godzilla is flying, I didn't know that he basically just looked like kind of like a mineral rock. Like it's just like his back is like all crystals, and then like just on the underbelly, you just see Space Godzilla. I did not know that was part of the design, so that was kind of cool because like in space, it just looked like a big mineral rock is just floating through space, and then they did that one part where like they see Space Godzilla flying, and like whoa, what is that? And then like they do the scan, and you just see like the crystals, and then you get like a 1 second glimpse of Space Godzilla on the bottom, and I was like, oh hey, there's Space Godzilla, that's cool. But outside of that, like him standing upright and whatever, like that, I mean, I had already seen his design before. But that being said, I did really like it. It did really feel basically just like a cosmic version of Godzilla. I liked the extra like teeth, kind of like on the side of the jaws and stuff like that. Like, that was all really cool, and just like the cosmic space crystals are also very cool. I thought it was kind of funny that they're basically just missiles. Like I could almost picture a Space Godzilla toy design where you like push a hidden button or like a little lever or something, and then the space crystals shoot off the back or whatever. So it kind of made me feel like it was probably one of those designs that like it was heavily made with the intention of like selling toys, but I don't even know if it exists. It just gave me that impression. So, but I really liked Space Godzilla's design, and that's why I would like to see Space Godzilla come back, because the design is cool. But yeah, I mean, I could see them doing the origin differently if they do Space Godzilla again, but I guess an alternative origin story that they could do that could be interesting is like on an Earth-like planet, another Godzilla like species exists, and so that's what Space Godzilla is. That could be interesting, but
Could be interesting.
But how would he get to Earth if he's on another planet?
by flying in crystal form.
Through space.
Exactly, through space, because he's Space Godzilla.
But if he exists on another planet, like was he pre-mutation, or would he just be regular, just Space Godzilla already, who can already fly?
Probably just Space Godzilla who can already fly. I would think, at least.
Interesting.
Unless he was mutated on purpose by aliens, and then the aliens are like, go find other creatures like you and destroy them. And then he flies, scanning the universe like, okay, found him. Kill him. And that's how he finds Godzilla.
Yeah. Do you think they ever will introduce aliens into the Monsterverse?
Technically, didn't they say King Ghidorah was an alien?
Oh, wait, you're right. Yeah, that's true. But I guess more like
humanoid aliens?
like what we see in the Showa era, like the Zillions. Yeah, like humanoid aliens, like the Zillions. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they do that.
I could see it happening, especially with how the new Empire kind of introduced that underground tribe.
I don't know. I feel like it might lose some people.
I mean, maybe, but I mean, if the new Empire didn't already lose enough people, like how much more could they lose? I mean, all the people that were fans of like 2014 for its groundness and realism probably checked out as soon as like King of the Monsters, and especially after Godzilla vs. Kong and the new Empire came to be.
I could see them adding aliens because, yeah, like you're saying, like it's really not that much more of a step considering everything else. Like if the Hollow Earth isn't enough to like get people to be like, oh, whoa, what? Then how is aliens? I mean, I think it was Miranda's point. I think it would depend. Like if they really just did 1960s Zillions, then
lose people.
Yeah, they'd probably lose people. They'd be like, "What the hell?"
I guess if they did it in a nice, like, interesting way, and not just like, here are aliens wearing ape masks and they wear chrome and they're from the future, that would probably not go over well.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, like if you're going to introduce something like the Zillions, you're going to have to update them for modern times. You can't just go with the ones from the 1960s and be like, yes, that's what we're doing.
Aliens, possibility they might come into the Monsterverse, but I guess technically Space Godzilla is an alien. because he's from space, even though he's a clone of Godzilla with the same DNA, yet different enough DNA that he has a bunch of spikes on him, which I did like, and does look like one of those like crystal things you can buy at like a crystal store, which is really cool. I did like that. But I also kind of liked how they structured his face, where he has these like, I don't know, face claw spikes like above his like mouth and his like cheekbones or his jaw there. I thought that was an interesting touch, making him like visually face like his face visually different compared to Godzilla. Because like he's obviously got these big shoulder pads because he's from the, you know, I was gonna say 80s, but this movie's from the 90s. But like shoulder pads were a big thing in the 80s, to my knowledge at least. But anyways, he has these like big spiky like shoulders, and like I like that like continued that like design in his face as well. And like his crystals get like blown off or broken off too, which I was like, whoa, I was not expecting that. So I have a question. I don't know if anyone's got an answer. His spikes, like, do they like kind of just disappear when he like stands upright on Earth, or like do they shoot out of his body and make all those spikes that are like around him throughout the city, or like what's going on there? Because they kind of just disappear when he stands.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
When you mention his spikes, do you mean like his back spikes or like the crystals that he summons?
The crystals, because he's like covered in crystals, but when he stands up, he's only got like the big one, and then he has his like dorsal spikes.
Are you talking about like the spikes that surround his body when he's flying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just there for when he's flying around, but then yeah, when maybe it's like a shell or something.
Yeah, is he like a reverse turtle or something?
Maybe.
Speaking of which, is there a kaiju that's a turtle, or is like, as in Gears, basically the closest thing despite not being a turtle?
I think that's the closest thing we'll get. Toho probably doesn't want to have too much awkwardness with Gamera.
Is Gamera like a turtle?
Yeah, Gamera is a turtle. Yeah, he's legitimately a giant turtle.
A ninja turtle?
Yes, he's a giant ninja turtle. Yes. There is one Gamera movie in the Showa era where he's like spinning around on a bar like a gymnast or whatever, so that's probably the closest we'll ever get to like a Gamera Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Interesting.
I don't know if we've seen the film. Yeah, there's a certain Godzilla movie that has like a reference to like a turtle. I don't want to say it without giving away what the joke is, but like, well, it's not really a joke, but there's a scene in a Godzilla movie with a giant turtle kaiju, but I don't know if we've watched it yet.
Mm.
Oh, I know what movie it is now. Okay, yeah, we haven't watched it yet.
You have to remind us when we get there.
But there, you will see a giant turtle in one of the future Godzilla movies, and I like to think that it's kind of a jab at Gamera when we do get to it.
Toho hates Gamera.
I mean, to be fair, like that, like Gamera, I feel like was made to like compete with Godzilla. Granted, he never really got far. He just never got as popular as Godzilla did. But yeah.
Speaking of like similarities with like other creatures and things, I mean, I think we've already talked about this stuff before, but like I did think it was kind of funny how Power Rangers coded the Mogera mecha was in this. Like it was more subtle because it was really just the interior, but like the separating vehicles and combining into one mecha was very like Megazord, and then like the cockpit, like them just sitting down in their chairs and whatever, like very Megazord like again. I mean, this came out before Power Rangers did, I'm pretty sure still, so Power Rangers is definitely inspired by this, like these kinds of movies and things like that, but again, I just thought it was cool. It was like, there we go, more Power Rangers-esque like mech stuff, I guess.
Mogera is kind of like similar to Power Rangers, and I will say, because this came out in the mid 90s, Power Rangers might have been out by this point, because I'm pretty sure Power Rangers was like early or mid 90s. I don't remember exactly when the franchise debuted exactly, but
According to my quick Google, I'm getting 1993, but I don't trust Google anymore, so I don't know.
That does sound right, though.
yeah. So like Power Rangers might have been out by this point, so who knows? They could have inspired each other. But I will say, while we're on the subject of Mogira, I did think, while it is cool because, like Miranda said earlier, Mogira is kind of like they brought back a kaiju from an older Toho movie called The Mysterians, and kind of rebooted him into like another version of Mechagodzilla. I do find it weird that, like, because this movie takes place sometime after Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. It's like, okay, you guys already tried like the mech idea, it failed, so you're gonna try it again. Like, just in universe wise, like in lore wise, I guess, for this movie, it's just weird to me that after their first attempt at making a robot to fight Godzilla failed, they just do it again. It's like, why wouldn't they just rebuild Mechagodzilla at that point? Why do you come up with a just completely new robot design? I mean, like Udi said, it comes apart, so maybe that was the differentiating idea there. It's like, okay, Mechagodzilla didn't come apart, so like this new robot we're gonna try because we have this design where it can like come apart, you know. So maybe that's what they were going for. But I do think it was kind of weird, even though it is cool to see like Toho use a lesser known monster from one of their older films. Even though that is kind of cool, I do think it is weird for them to go back to trying to use a mech again after it like failed the first time.
But this time it has to come apart and fly in space, and is like a mech from Pacific Rim too, because it's got like the 3 pilots and they like split apart, and like, I don't know. I just watched Pacific Rim, the second one. It wasn't great. So that was on my mind when I was watching this. But I'm totally seeing the Power Rangers thing now that you guys have mentioned it. I'm like, yeah, no. Feels Power Ranger. Feels Voltron-y.
It seems like mechs were definitely starting to get more popular around this time, and I'm sure they had started like kind of borrowing ideas from each other, especially like, again, like this, like they seem to be coming out around the same period of time. So then like all the Megazord stuff probably, you know, lines up. And I don't know when like Gundam really started out or became popular, but I'm sure Gundam to some degree also, I think, came out around the 80s or 90s. So that probably also started like feeding into like the feedback loop of inspiring each other and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, definitely a feedback loop there. Now that we're in the 90s, is like, I know a bit more of everything that came out in the 90s compared to the other time, but like, it is interesting, as I'm pretty sure I've said before, to see those like reoccurring elements and like other things and how it's all interconnected, and it's really cool to like watch and observe.
Yeah, it's always nice to like see things that you like kind of play off of other things that you like. It's just kind of a fun little feedback loop, and it's cool to like notice things in like the cross-pollination like projects that you like. Be like, hey, that seems inspired by this thing that I like. That's fun. So I always like that sort of thing. And if it leads to better projects, like better movies, better games, better whatever, then hey, we're all winners there. One quick thing I wanted to add that I thought was kind of interesting. So we're exiting the 80s because we're entering the 90s, and there is one like part of this movie where it's like Mickey, and I don't remember exactly who she's talking to or what the situation was, but it just felt very 80s-y because they went for, it seemed like, especially with the lighting, it felt more like they were trying to set it for like a romantic, or not necessarily like between the two characters, but like the way that the film was shot and like everything and the coloring, it felt very like romantic. Like it was like a sunset and it was all like rosy orange, blah blah. And I'm like, where did this come from? Like this felt kind of random, but it definitely gave me sort of like a Top Gun vibe where like it's just like the sunset and the colors, and I don't know, it just felt very 80s-y, and I thought that was kind of funny. But it was very beautiful, so very well done.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I felt like that's what they were trying to do, is they were trying to set up a love interest for like Miki. At least that's the vibe I got. So That is, yeah, and then that whole scene with like the sunset, that did feel like very like late 80s Top Gun like, so I can get where you're coming from there, but I did feel like that was kind of odd how like, yeah, just out of nowhere, all of a sudden it seems like they're trying to set up a love interest for Miki, so yeah.
It's like they had the idea, but they just didn't plan out how to do it, and so it appears out of nowhere, and then they just kind of move on. I don't really feel like it was addressed much after that.
So I have a kind of a question for you guys. How do you guys feel about this whole like telepathy subplot that's been in the Heisei era? Because while I think it's interesting and it has led to like I like Miki, she's one of my favorite characters from the Heisei era. Like she's a very memorable character for me, and like the whole like telepathy thing is interesting, I guess. But I feel like it's kind of just there, and like you could have made these movies without the telepathy side plot and they would still be fine. Like take Project T for example. It's like, okay, they want to control Godzilla using telepathy, but you could have definitely retrofitted that into some other type of like control, like science fiction mind control device. So I don't know. I feel like the whole telepathy thing is just kind of very underutilized, and I think you could have gotten away with like not even using it in any of the movies. So how are you guys feeling about it? Do you like the whole like telepathy side plot that's been going on in the background here? Do you feel like I do? Do you feel like it's kind of just unnecessary? Like how are you guys feeling about it?
I like it because it's unique compared to the Showa films. I think if they took it out, it would feel really, really similar to like those previous movies. I also think it gives it this era a unique like little like hook. It could definitely have been expanded more, and we'll see with the last movie coming up on how it like all plays out. But I think it's interesting because it gives us like one character that's in all the movies. It's like this follow through line. We can tell that these are like interconnected, and I think that was a good way to structure the second era of Godzilla movies. Because, like, without it, I feel like they would just get way too samey. I mean, they're already samey, but, like, at least we get a little variety. I think the actress who plays Miki does a really good job at, like, showing this, like, power and, like, and I like her, like, role throughout the era and the movies. So, I think it's interesting and unique.
Yeah, I would say that it's not something I need in these movies, and it's not something that I was like, oh man, I hope that they do, uh, telekinesis slash like telepathy side plot with one of these characters. Man, wouldn't that be cool? But I mean, they're doing it, and it doesn't bother me at all. I feel like it fits with this world that they've made, and yeah, I don't know. It's something interesting, and it's just one of those things where it's just like, oh yeah, there's just a girl who can communicate with Godzilla and or the other kaiju. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I like that it's a recurring character that this is like happening with. So like I like Miki, like she's been a fun little consistent character that like they don't necessarily do a lot with her, but like it's cool to have this character with these special abilities, and like you guys have said, like I think she does a good job with like the bit that she's given to do in every movie, and I feel like she plays the role well. And I mean, you can feel that she cares about Godzilla, which is like the number one reason for a character to exist, basically. Like she just really cares about Godzilla and all of that. So I think despite kind of like having a limited role in the grand scheme of things and not having like a ton of stuff to like do, I think she does a good job, and yeah, it doesn't bother me at all, so I'm okay with it. So yeah, I guess like at this point there's few things that I feel like I would be like there'd be too few things that I feel like would bother me at this point, and I think they would only bother me if it didn't make sense in like the established universe. So for example, in the next movie, if they did zombies, it'd be like, what? Why? That's weird, random. But like the idea of like a movie with Godzilla with zombies or like set in a zombie apocalypse, like that, that could be cool. I would be down for that. But if it was like the next movie in this Heisei era, I would be very confused. I'd be like, is this like a Halloween special or something? What's going on here? But outside of like things like that, I feel like, or like sorcery or like literal magic, that would be crazy. But again, if it was like a one-off sort of thing where that was an established factor, then it's like, okay, sure, why not? You know, let's see what they do. But I feel like outside of individual things like that, I wouldn't personally be bothered as long as it made sense within the established film or like era or stuff like that.
What did you guys think of Junior's design in this movie? He definitely looks a lot different than he did in Mechagodzilla. I like his little spikes because they remind me of popcorn. Yeah.
Popcorn.
Yeah, his little spikes, they remind me of popcorn kernels on his back.
Oh, okay, yeah, the popcorn. Yeah, I can see the popcorn kernels. Yeah. But as for my opinion on him, I mean, I feel like he looks more Godzilla-like than the last one, because wasn't the last one more like dinosaur-y, kind of like dinosaur coated?
I actually think he looked more Godzilla-like in the previous movie than in this one.
Oh, maybe I'm confusing the movies. I don't know, but I thought he looked cute. He looked like a '90s Godzilla toy made for kids. So I think mission accomplished on their behalf. But he was kind of cute. Still infinitely better than He Who Will Not Be Named, aka Manila. So I actually named him, but whatever. Infinitely better than anything to do with Manila still. So I don't know if necessarily this is my favorite appearance of Baby Godzilla, but I liked it, you know. For what it is, I liked Baby Godzilla's design. What about you, Miranda?
I don't think I noticed the differences. I don't know what he looked like before, and he looked fine this time around. So I thought it was weird that he was in this movie, because it shows up, gets captured, and then doesn't show up again until the end. But like, he was all right. He's way better than Manila, so you know.
And I guess on the note of the characters, I don't think we've talked about this, but did we have any sort of strong feelings about this cast of human characters?
I mean, the only one that I really remember is the guy that wants revenge on Godzilla, because like I'm trying to think of all the other gods. Have we ever gotten a human character before that wanted to enact revenge on Godzilla up until this point? I don't remember. I'm trying to think of all the countless human characters we've had in the previous Godzilla movies. And I think this is the first one that we have where someone actively wanted to get revenge like on Godzilla. So that guy stuck out to me, but he's really the only memorable character in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think, yeah, aside from Mickey, he's probably the number one character that stuck out the most to me as well. And I mean, I think, like you're saying, I think he is the first character, technically and chronologically speaking, that is seeking revenge on Godzilla. So, like, that made him a bit more interesting, even though he didn't get his revenge technically. But, yeah, I mean, it was a fine cast. I feel like we probably had worse, but my only thing I will say is I think it's hilarious that no matter how many of these movies we watch, they seemingly always find new American actors, or at least new English-speaking actors, who are terrible. I have to imagine that because, as we brought up before, like the Godzilla movies before were not seen as like good cinema or like good movies. They were like movies for children or just like movies people didn't take seriously. They probably couldn't get like either actual Hollywood talent or people who were more well known, or maybe it was a budgetary thing. I don't know. I really don't know. But I do think it's hilarious because every time an American came on screen, I was like, oh my God, that line reading is not good. It is so flat. It feels like a take one, like they're still kind of processing what it'll sound like and they're saying it and then they just move on. But it is what it is. It doesn't really bring the movie down. I'm kind of used to it, but every time I just think it's hilarious because as soon as they start speaking, you're like, yep, there they are.
I don't really have anything to add about the cast. I think they did good. The American our English-speaking actors were awkward as usual. I don't really have much to say. But on that note, are we ready for our lizard fact of the day?
I'm ready.
It's time for the lizard fact of the day. Today's lizard is the frilled dragon. It's a lizard from northern Australia and southern New Guinea. It has a large frill around its neck, and they have gray, orangish, brownish coloring with red, orange, and yellow frills. So basically think of a little tiny dinosaur of the one that eats Nedry in Jurassic Park. I guess that's a spoiler, sorry. It's an old movie. But it's kind of like that. And I picked it because, I don't know, it has like a spiky neck and it reminded me of Spacegodzilla. So that's our lizard fact of the day. Let's jump into our ratings. Dan, what would you give Godzilla vs. Spacegodzilla out of 5 stars?
I think I'm going to go with a 3. Even though it sounds like I've been very negative on this movie, I think a 2.5 would be a little too harsh because, once again, I don't think it's fine. It's not awful. There are far worse Godzilla movies out there, and yeah, it may be my least favorite in the Heisei era, but I love the Heisei era. And like, to be my least favorite in there, it's a very high bar. So, it's not something to take too much stock into. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 3. It's fine. Space Godzilla's cool. The second half is awesome. So yeah.
All right, a 3. That's totally fair. Makes sense. What about you, Udi?
I'm honestly going to give it an extra half star just because of Space Godzilla alone. The design of Space Godzilla is really cool, and I mean, I would say the action in the third act is pretty cool, and the special effects, especially with the crystal missiles and like everything, like the sparklers and whatnot. Like, I just thought all that was really cool. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I'll be a little generous, but I really did like Space Godzilla's design, and I would like to see Space Godzilla again. So I'll give it a 3.5.
That totally makes sense. I also really liked Space Godzilla, so I'm also giving it a 3.5. I don't think I could give it a 4, even though I really, really want to. It just kind of lacks in some of that, like, stuff that I was looking, and that's on me. That's me putting expectations on the movie. So, I disappointed myself. But the movie we do have is pretty entertaining, pretty fun. Space Godzilla is cool. I like his design. Godzilla's cool as always. And the mech was interesting too. So yeah, that means the Atomic Lizard's average score for Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is a 3.33 repeating, which would round to a 3.5 in our rating system. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our previous episodes, and as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizard.